Ironman VR has just released on the Quest 2, and oh boy does it not disappoint. Up until now, this game has been a PlayStation VR exclusive. Since I started up this VR YouTube channel, I have been tempted many times to pick up a PlayStation VR out of curiosity of not only the hardware, but also because of this game. I actually knew nothing about this game going into it, other than it's Iron Man in VR. The thought of flying around as Iron Man sounds like the perfect VR experience, and so far after trying the Quest 2 version, I have to say it has exceeded my expectations. Now the game is not without its flaws by any means, and to be honest, $40 is a pretty hefty price tag when you factor in some of the limitations and design choices, but luckily I have a referral link down in the description you can use to get 25% off if you decide you want to pick it up after watching the rest of this video. Again, I didn't actually know what to expect going into this game. I was feeling particularly sluggish when I booted up this game, so I decided to try to play this game sitting down. Well, after exploring the options menu, I quickly found out this is not a sit-down VR experience. Because of that, I feel the Quest 2 is the perfect home for this title, considering the Quest 2 is a standalone headset and does not need to be tethered to the PlayStation 4 console. So even if you already played this game on PS4, the Quest 2 version may be worth looking into if you had any issues feeling like you could not comfortably spin around while flying around in the game. So before we proceed any further, I want to say spoiler alert. The story campaign of this game consists of 12 chapters, which I actually just googled that right now. I'm going to go over everything I experienced in my first play session, which is going to be a little bit into chapter 3. Feel free to watch as much as you can stomach getting spoiled, but make sure you leave a like and subscribe before you leave if you do enjoy the video. There are two types of scenes this game offers, which they refer to as cinematic scenes and then the normal gameplay scenes. The story is mainly delivered in the so-called cinematic scenes, which are largely on rail as you have to go from point A to point B. In the opening, you're assuming the role of Tony Stark and have to walk over to this podium to give a speech. As you can see, while the story is being delivered via audio narrative, you have the freedom to look around and perform hand gestures. I spent my time playing around with the inverse kinematics, which I'm honestly still not a big fan of personally because of elbow disconnect. As you can see from this footage, it can end up looking a bit ridiculous, but I can totally see the appeal of seeing arms in VR, so I am just giving this a bit of a hard time and having some good fun here. After a cliffhanger ending to the speech, you get booted up into the Iron Man suit, which is demonstrated with an incredible UI sequence. Just as you would expect from being Iron Man, you fly around with thrusters from the palm of your hands. So to go up, you point your palms down, and to fly forward, you put your hands behind you with your palms facing backwards. And oh my god, they got the gameplay feel absolutely perfect for this. And as soon as you get the feel of this movement down, they ingeniously ran the opening credit sequence as you fly over a large body of water as they displayed the publisher, Marvel, developer, and the title of the game. I thought this was a very creative and perfectly executed sequence that instantly got me hooked in. You were then brought into more tutorials where you learn how to shoot repulsors out of your palms. And let me tell you something, this shooting feels so good, especially combined with the physics of turning your body in real life to look at the targets. And then after that, they combined all these mechanics together and you get started flying around the map, hunting down and shooting targets. Such simple tasks on paper, but I felt nothing but joy while doing it. And after a few simple flying and shooting exercises, the onboarding learning curve is again perfectly taken to the next level by forcing you to do a speedrun flight test course. And as you can see by the footage, you need to fly through all the rings and shoot the targets for bonus points. And this course also introduces a new punching mechanic as well. These test flight courses are where I feel this game is going to shine the most. I had such a fun time running through this and I finished my first attempt with 1 minute and 3 seconds, finding out that I smashed the target time of 2 minutes and 30 seconds. If you already have this game or decide to pick it up after this video, then please let me know down in the comments what your time was on your first try. After this test flight, the tutorial is completed and you move on to the speech scene again, where this part of the narrative continues to progress, as it will continue to do so in this fashion throughout the game. However, I noticed that the podium was no longer there, which I just don't know why. The stage lights are there, so why remove the podium? My guess is that this is just a hidden loading scene and this was done for optimization purposes. I just don't really know, but it felt odd and noticeable to me. You're then brought into Stark's home, which is one of the first real cinematic scenes the game has. The first thing I tried to do was see if I can interact with objects, but sadly you can only interact with a very select few items that are meant to help flesh out a bit more of the game's lore. For a $40 title, more interactions with the objects in these cinematic areas would have been nice. Now, let's be real, this game looks absolutely beautiful for a Quest 2 game, so as a developer myself working on my own VR game, I can't help but wonder if the lack of interactions is for optimization purposes. I have the same curiosity for why your hands can pass through so many solid objects in this game. I'm not sure if it was just something overlooked or not, but again, this is a premium $40 quest title, so I find it odd that these small, obvious details have been so overlooked. Unless, of course, the lack of hitboxes and interactable objects were a design choice in favor of the top-tier environments and graphics for the Quest 2 standards. You can explore around as much as you want in these cinematic scenes, but they are largely on rail. Essentially, you have as much time to go from point A to point B as you would like, free to explore and have fun looking around the environment and picking up new pieces of lore, as well as a few other interactable objects. But when you finally do decide to go to point B, you are typically stripped of your ability to walk, as you can see by this icon on the screen when trying to do so. Of course, this does make sense, as this is strongly a story-driven VR experience, but I do wish I could have walked around while talking to the other characters, as I feel like restricting the player's movement broke the immersion experience a bit. But like most of my negative points in these first impressions, I do feel like I'm largely nitpicking here. After the rooftop scene, you are then brought into an airplane scene where more of the story unfolds until the plane gets blasted by an enemy. Tony's suit flies out the window and he eventually jumps out and begins the equip sequence, which is just done so well. Once the suit is fully booted up, you fly back towards the plane and the Chapter 1 title appears. This again just feels like such a polished way of delivering the story seamlessly in this VR experience. This level has you flying around destroying enemies and fixing various issues the plane is encountering from being shot in hopes to save the plane. Again, mostly flying from point A to point B, where you are then restricted from movement until you complete the interactive task, but nonetheless, the execution here is so good. And this is the same for flying around and destroying enemies. I definitely got the impression of a Star Fox type of vibe here, which honestly maybe bringing Star Fox to VR is exactly what Nintendo needs to do with that franchise. Another type of feeling I got from this particular scene was a similar feeling as playing a Dave & Buster's arcade game, but I say that in the best possible way. I feel like this plane flying scenario is delivered at such a perfect time in this game where I feel this is super accessible for players of any age or gaming experience level. I dare you to try this game out from the beginning, and once you get to this scene, not feel a pure state of joy as if you were playing an arcade game at Dave & Buster's but cranked to 11. Again, I make that comparison in the best way possible. Once you complete that level, you are presented an end of chapter screen where you can see all your stats, you get a star rating on how you performed, and also see how many research points you earned for that level. You're given a couple more cinematic scenes and environments to explore at your own pace, but eventually the sequence leads you to the Ironman suit, which is actually where this game utilizes a type of skill point system where you can use your research points you earned based on your performance in the story chapters and can spend them on upgrades to your suit. There are a ton of different types of weapons and configurations here, and even a loadout system where you can save a couple of different setting combinations to play with. They even have unlockable skins, which are locked behind specific challenges, giving you more objectives to do in the game as well. After more story segments, you are then brought to Chapter 2 of the game, which delivers a tutorial on new items you are forced to purchase from the skill tree system, and also introduces some new mechanics as well, such as the ground pound. These new mechanics are then fully integrated into the game's second flight course. This one was definitely more challenging than the first one, but it was still incredibly fun again and made me feel like the flight courses are definitely the highlight of this entire package. This is only Chapter 2 so far, and I'm starting to get nervous at how extreme these courses may start to become. More cinematic scenes, and then eventually are given a mission map where you can then select Chapter 3. This chapter takes place in Shanghai during the night, which creates this absolutely beautiful city scene which feels so cool to fly around in. The darker environment is a perfect contrast to all the daytime gameplay scenes up to this point. Mixing it up at this time really feels good in terms of pacing and keeping the environments from feeling stale. Gameplay wise follows the same type of progression where now the enemies get a buff as well. I could definitely feel the difficulties start to creep up at this point, and I ended up dying for the first time here. Keep in mind, I am playing on normal difficulty, and there are 2 more levels above this still. I can't imagine how much more difficult this game is going to get, let alone on the hardest difficulty setting, which in my opinion is great in terms of replayability. Not going to lie though, I was getting pretty tired at this point and really wanted to start working on this video. So far, I personally feel like this is one of the best VR games I've ever played. The game is semi on rails and has some nitpicky flaws, but the polish and presentation here is absolutely top tier for the Quest 2. The pacing of the onboarding of getting the player from zero to being able to effectively experience the game as intended is just so well executed. After this first play session, I absolutely plan on going back in and finishing the rest of the game and see what else it may offer post-game if anything. I would love to think that looking at the skill tree system and the nature of the chapter high scores and flight course times, that there will be some good replayability in terms of completing all the challenges and playing on higher difficulty settings. I would say $40 does feel a tad bit much for this game though in terms of all-around game modes, but I was actually able to pick up this game completely off of referral kickbacks from my Bone Lab First Impressions video. So thank you all who used that link, as it really does does help support this channel. Likewise, I will leave a link in the description of this video for Ironman VR, where if you use it, you'll get 25% off, so you can pick it up for $30, which I think is a much better price for this game anyways, though it's probably the Ironman IP which is causing this game to feel a little more pricey than it should be. And again, not only do you get 25% off, but I get a $5 kickback as well, so using the link will definitely help support this channel. And if you don't already have a Quest 2 headset, then I'll leave a referral link in the description for that as well. And if you use that, we will both get $30 in store credit. Also, if you pick up a Quest 2 before the end of 2022, you will get Beat Saber for free, which is another $30 value as well. If you made it this far in the video, consider liking and subscribing. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.